Thank you so much, and thank you to CAP today and to Thermo Fisher for inviting me and LUNGevity to participate in this. My name is Nikki Martin. I am the LUNGevity Foundation Senior Director of Precision Medicine Initiatives. I'm going to be sharing with you more about the patient experience with liquid biopsy in the context of what you've already heard about access and comprehension really by the patient about what this type of test is, what it does for them, and the how it connects them to treatments or clinical trials. LUNGevity is a patient advocacy organization. We focus on lung cancer. So in these slides, I'll be really presenting it from the lung cancer point of view. But I think that a lot of the feedback I'll be sharing is relevant across the spectrum of any cancer type. And because lung cancer is farther ahead in terms of precision medicine and maybe access issues with liquid biopsy, the lung cancer patient insights are really important for understanding how we can shape the market so that it can support other cancer types, other cancer patients when liquid biopsy is further adopted across the board for those patients. So first, I'm going to start talking about biomarker testing, and then I'm going to get into liquid biopsy. I just want to set the stage. When we're talking about biomarker testing for patients, like identifying the biomarkers so that patients can get the right treatment, put on the right care plan for them, they have three basic questions that typically come up. What is a biomarker? Why are they important for me now that I have cancer? And can I pass these biomarkers to my patient, to my children? These are typically the three most important things that patients are thinking about. And in general, the average patient does not know the answers to these, and they need their doctor to talk to them about these topics. And as with all aspects of cancer care, a patient doesn't want to be a bystander. So they don't want to have things done to them. They want to be part of the team that's drawing up the solution. So here are some additional points to make about what they're looking for. They want to understand the expectations of treatment, what is expected of them as part of this diagnostic process. They want to be included as part of the care team. They want to know that the care team has their best interests in mind, that they're going to have access to the optimal care for their type of cancer. And they want to have this knowledge and powers as part of their diagnostic process and treatment decision-making process. So I think that's important to set the stage with that very basic information, but sometimes overlooked. And then the next thing is some of the speakers have already touched on this, but we still face a lot of barriers with patient access to biomarker testing, whether it's with a tissue or a liquid-based test. And these barriers are much more accentuated for people of color, lower socioeconomic level, lower health literacy level, English as a second language. Immigrants have no insurance coverage or low insurance coverage. And then if they're meeting with a doctor who has low understanding of what the guidelines recommend, or just isn't familiar with the latest offerings on the diagnostic side. So let's talk now about liquid biopsy. In preparing for this talk, I spoke to several patients that are in the LUNGevity network, and I found that there was a range of information that they knew about liquid biopsy. Some of them had a very literal perspective of liquid biopsy because the term, as you know, it's a very jargon-based term. It doesn't have any meaning if you're just approaching it literally. And so you can see that first quote really reflects that. Some people might have had a little more information, but there was a lot of confusion about what exactly it means. They knew that it had to do with the blood. That was it. And then there was also, the more savvy patient who does have a strong understanding and has a good sense of the key benefits that we all think about, the practical benefits of liquid biopsy. So doctors and people in the labs need to keep this in mind, I think, because it relates to not only how doctors should be talking to their patients, but also maybe how laboratories are creating like their results report from the liquid biopsy. I think having some basic patient information at the top of the results report to explain what this type of test is, that it was used with your blood and what it does, I think is critical to help eliminate some of this basic confusion that patients have. So there's a general awareness, understanding, there's a general level of perceived benefits for some patients, but then even patients with the most savvy level of knowledge have concerns about not only the limitations, perceived limitations of liquid biopsy, but also how does this really relate? Can I trust this for making a treatment decision? So I'll just share a little bit about that. As I already mentioned, there is a wide understanding of liquid biopsy by patients. There's confusion about what liquid biopsy is and how it differs from other types of tests. There was a lot of confusion around MRD testing, which surprised me that patients were even familiar with MRD testing. But those that have been diagnosed a while ago, they thought liquid biopsy was only MRD testing, and that it didn't have anything to do with treatment selection. I think that just has to do with whether they're getting how they're learning about it from their doctors. But it again just brings us back to they don't know what MRD is, but they're hearing it in the context of liquid biopsy. So that's how they're perceiving it. They didn't understand that it might have a relationship to treatment selection. So the terminology becomes really critical, that we get alignment on that, and that it becomes much clearer for the patient. So on the perceived benefits, they were unclear. Well, they were clear on the fact that it was less invasive than a tissue biopsy, of course. They understood that it had faster turnaround time, and that would, for them, mean that they could start their treatments faster. And they were also really curious about liquid biopsy as a screening tool. And I think someone mentioned that would be a miraculous if that was possible. So, there is excitement about this type of technology. But again, there's a lack of understanding about what all it can do. Well, let's talk about some of the concerns that they had. There was a lot of discussion around what if it misses a biomarker, and what does that mean for me maybe not getting on the right treatment? Some of the more savvy patients actually had compared their tissue-based tests with their blood-based tests, and they could see that there were some biomarkers that were found on one test and not the other test. And to them, that was very concerning, as you can imagine. They don't understand what the biomarkers are for, or even if they have a role. Maybe they're just a variant of unknown significance. But to them, again, those tests should be equal in terms of their results. So there's also concern around the timing of the test. What if my doctor gets my results back for liquid biopsy before my tissue results, and then they make an incorrect decision to put me on an immunotherapy when I may not have a biomarker? So they have a basic level of understanding of some of this, especially from talking to other patients in the space. And they're concerned that maybe as the technology advances, my doctor, will he or she know how to take advantage of this technology for the best results for my care without making a mistake. So here again, words, the technology that it's developed in labs. So it's understanding that the technology liquid biopsy is a jargon-based term that has proliferated, but unfortunately patients, and I think maybe even providers, end up having to navigate the difficult terms that are all generated by companies and by professionals themselves. And I think it would be really beneficial for the industry with advocacy groups and providers to align on how are we going to talk about this, not only to discuss different types of tests as they get developed, but also most importantly with patients, so they're clear on what does what. And finally, these are in my opinion, these are the key ways we can start to overcome some of these barriers that patients have to access the test and understand the benefits. HCPs need much more education. We need better policy and support advocacy so that there's coverage for both tests at the same time, tissue and blood. And finally, much more improvement in how patients receive communication about the tests from companies, from their pathologists and the laboratory reports with the results, and from their oncologists and nurses. I encourage you, if you're a doctor or nurse listening to this, to take a screenshot of this QR code. This is a tool that we created with, it's a pan-cancer tool. It looks maybe a little busy, but it's a tool that guides a patient to know how they can talk to their doctor to find out if they've had liquid biopsy, if they've had tissue testing, and what the results mean for their care. We developed this with many other advocacy organizations, patients, and providers, and have heard much positive feedback on it. And yeah, so in summary, I encourage everyone on this call to think as much as possible when it comes to liquid biopsy. How are we educating and engaging our patients about it? Are we using patient-friendly language? Are we including them in the decision-making process for how to use this tool and how to use the results? Can we explain to them how the results impact their treatment decisions and make sure that's really clear? And also, if we're using it for monitoring as well as treatment selection, be really clear on what the difference is. So with that, I will close, and thank you again for this opportunity.